Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to Fish MD, the show where we make health and science-related topics as interesting as a roller coaster ride. My name is Michael, I'm a medical doctor and your host. Today's show is about gluten, the mysterious ingredient that seems to be in almost everything we eat. However, there is an ever-growing opposition to this supposedly harmless food staple. We keep seeing more and more gluten-free products in the supermarket and people swearing by a gluten-free diet, claiming it makes them feel better. Famous tennis player Novak Djokovic even wrote a whole book about it, making a gluten-free diet partly responsible for his stellar tennis career. So, is there any truth behind this biggest health trend of the last decade? Or is it just another hype of the food industry, trying to sell us overpriced products? Continue watching to find out. So, let's start out by defining what gluten is. Gluten is a protein found in different grains, most commonly wheat, barley and rye. We as Westerners tend to consume a lot of gluten because our diet is very rich in carbohydrates, talking about the infamous food pyramid, which is basically wrong and also the cause of a lot of diseases in Western society. But no, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole today. That is a topic for another discussion. Coming back to gluten. As it is omnipresent, meaning it is present in a lot of different types of food, we tend to consume between 5 to 15 grams of gluten every day. Obvious sources of gluten include all the things we love. For example, bread, wheat-based pasta, cereal, crackers, beer, cakes, and of course, my beloved pizza. Gluten makes the dough elastic and stretchy, trapping gas within baked goods and thereby providing it with this airy, light structure. When we talk about gluten, it is commonly associated with an autoimmune disorder called celiac disease. In celiac disease, affected individuals develop a severe immune reaction in their small intestine upon the ingestion of gluten. Sometimes, even eating small tiny breadcrumbs or even kissing somebody that had just eaten gluten is enough to cause a severe reaction in the gut. The inflammation leads to symptoms such as diarrhea, weight loss, fatigue, and malabsorption of nutrients, which causes a whole lot of problems on its own. For example, iron deficiency anemia or osteoporosis. The incidence of celiac disease is pretty low, globally around 1%. However, due to the common misconception, even among doctors, that celiac disease only affects children, around 70 to 80% of affected adults are undiagnosed. To develop full-blown celiac disease, you have to have a predisposition for it in your genetic makeup. You need an environmental stimulus, such as the ingestion of gluten, and you need the inflammatory reaction causing changes in your gut. The only way to treat celiac disease is by avoiding gluten in your diet for the rest of your life. Luckily, nowadays food companies produce a multifold of gluten-free products that rival conventional food items in taste and quality. From a historical standpoint, the ingestion of gluten is a pretty new part of our diet. For only about 10,000 years, we have been eating it, meaning 99.9% of human evolution has been gluten-free. Fact is, gluten cannot be completely broken down by our digestive enzymes. We just lack the correct enzymes to do the job. This is always a key argument by people supporting a gluten-free diet. One thing gluten does in every human body is the release of an enzyme called zonulin in our small intestine. This was discovered by Harvard professor Alessandro Fasano. Zonulin is normally a part of our defense mechanism against bacterial overgrowth in our small intestine. Unlike the large intestine, where we have a lot of bacteria which form the gut microbiome, the small intestine has relatively few bacteria. In case of an infection in the small intestine, zonulin causes the release of water to flush out these unwanted guests. When gluten enters the small intestine, this causes the release of zonulin, making the gut wall more permeable, which however does not automatically translate into a disease or a sickness. For all this to happen, you need a correct, or in this case incorrect, combination of increased gut permeability caused by high levels of zonulin, changes in your gut microbiome, meaning the bacteria in your gut, a genetic predisposition, and of course an environmental trigger such as gluten to develop full-blown celiac disease. As we now understand celiac disease, the mechanism of zonulin, and the changes in the gut permeability, also termed leaky gut syndrome, which supposedly also facilitates the absorption of toxins and bacteria from the intestine into the body, why is there an ever-growing fraction of supposedly healthy individuals, including many celebrities such as Kourtney Kardashian, Jessica Alba and Katy Perry, that adhere to a strict gluten-free diet? In the US, it is estimated that around 20 to 30% of people have at some point tried or are still on a gluten-free diet. And this without ever being diagnosed with celiac disease. Ancient physician Hippocrates, 460 BC, already said, all disease begins in the gut. And he was right. This is because the gut is the largest interface we humans have, how we interact with our environment. This is always underestimated because everything is so tightly packed in here. However, our intestine may be up to 8 meters or spanning a whole tennis court. Reasons for this gluten avoidance are manifold. As rarely anything in life is black or white, there are milder forms of celiac disease, including a wheat allergy or a gluten sensitivity. These diseases have similar symptoms: bloating, changes of stool consistency upon the ingestion of gluten, fatigue. However, these forms are much milder than full-blown celiac disease, and that's why it is much more difficult to diagnose them. So, if a person eliminates gluten from the diet and after a while feels much better than before, this must mean that they have some kind of intolerance to it, right? Unfortunately, this topic is further complicated, as when people start adhering to a gluten-free diet, they automatically start eliminating junk food and processed food from their diet. One good example is potassium bromide, a popular chemical in the US which is added to bread to help it rise and give it a nice consistency. However, it is known to cause cancer in animals. That's why it is banned in the European Union, where I'm from, and even in China. So, feeling better on a gluten-free diet may not actually be due to the gluten itself, but from eliminating toxic chemicals in junk food. What are key takeaway points from this video, besides seeing a lot of beautiful animations and me stirring up more questions than I'm actually answering? Should we all be on a gluten-free diet? Is it the cure for all diseases? In my opinion, if you suffer from celiac-like symptoms, you should definitely try out a gluten-free diet, as it is risk-free and easy to do. However, keep in mind that gluten may be present in foods that you would expect to be gluten-free, such as soy sauce, so always check the label. If you have some kind of gluten or wheat intolerance, To feel improvements may take a long time though, sometimes up to a year. Keep in mind that celiac disease or gluten intolerance may occur at any age. In people above 65 years of age, it will typically manifest with rather unspecific symptoms such as a vitamin or a mineral deficiency, and very often also an iron deficiency anemia. For the rest of us, like me, who never had problems with gluten in the past, I cannot make a recommendation because the science isn't there yet. As personally I like to try out new things, I've been on a gluten-free diet for the last 2 weeks. It is a bit annoying because I love pizza, bread and pasta. My goal with this experiment is to see if I feel any different on a gluten-free diet. I want to try this for 3 to 6 months, possibly even longer. I will keep you updated about my gluten-free experiment. What about you? Have you ever tried a gluten-free diet? How has that worked for you? My name is Michael, I'm your host, and I hope I left you smarter than I found you.